In the spirit of reconciliation, Admin Avenues in Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Nick, thank you for joining Admin Avenues. Obviously, this topic is close to both of our hearts. To Admin Avenues people, Nick needs no introduction because he is featured often. He has a blog post on our site, and also we really enjoy being members of his community, which is the Admin Collective. So we often promote each other's events and what's going on, and so yeah, we're very collaborative and we love working together. So Nick's pronouns are he, him, and his. He's a professional keynote speaker, sharing knowledge and life lessons with audiences worldwide. He's a host of Open Drive podcast that focuses on Nick's childhood and how he managed to break the cycle of addiction and mental health struggles to create the life he wanted. He's also a passionate advocate for the administrative profession and is the founder of the Admin Collective, as I mentioned, a community for administrative professionals worldwide that is focused on shared learning, member meetups, and learning together in a confidential and judgment-free community. Underpinning his work is a desire to increase mental well-being through shared stories, safe communities, and increased time to focus on self-care. He's extremely passionate about mental health and is currently completing his Bachelor of Psychology because, yeah, that's what you need to add on top of all that he does. So without further ado, I introduce to you Nick Ginsburg. Nick, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
You read that. I promise it isn't as tiring as what that sounded. It's all very much exciting and fun. But yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm as you know, I'm so passionate about this and super excited about this chat. Very, very excited.
So am I. I think it's really important. Obviously, we've connected on this deeper level. It means very much to us as we're both part of the LGBTQIA plus community. And so I wanted to dive into that to kind of explain, especially for the younger people that may not understand that there was such a struggle to get to a point where people felt open and safe to celebrate Pride, especially as part of the LGBT group. But tonight we're going to focus on the significance of being able to celebrate Pride because many people think it's about glitter and rainbows and they think, oh yeah, it's colourful and that's what Pride's about. But it's actually a celebration and observation of the LGBTQI plus community. So this month allows us to reflect on the struggles of those who came before us and those paving the way for our future as the next chapter of the LGBTQI plus history is written. So now that I have done all of that, I read a wonderful quote of yours on social media that I'm going to read out. It stated, being able to live openly and freely is critically important. Our mental health relies on it. When did you finally feel comfortable to be able to live your authentic self?
It took a while. It really took a while. So I was raised by same-sex parents. And so a lot of people have the assumption that because I grew up with two mums, that my coming to terms with my sexuality would be a really easy path. And it really wasn't. I struggled for a long time. And then there are a lot of people that go through this, especially in the community where you have sort of internalized homophobia. So for me, I was so worried about appearing feminine and being anything but a Queensland guy, right? So I'm in Melbourne now, but
Gold Coast, wasn't it? Gold Coast, very specific.
Yeah, but that was a real struggle for me growing up, and even I would say my late 20s, so I'm 37, around my late 20s, I started going, you know what, this is too exhausting. I don't want to do this, which is why I speak so much about authenticity and all of that, because it is so mentally draining. So if you look at our, particularly for the people within our community, the mental health or mental illness rates are so high. So we're much higher than other demographics. And a part of that is about us having to hide and the trauma that is associated a lot of the times with people's coming out stories and acceptances within their family and their community. It's rough, but yeah, it took me a long time to get there, a really long time. And then once I did, I kind of went, oh, wow, I've got so much more energy.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm just going to read another quote that if you see or hear of someone being homophobic, transphobic, biphobic, etc., make sure you speak up, and then in brackets, if it's safe to do so. So my first point on that is it's sad that you felt like you had to add that caveat to the message. And my second point is, do you feel people generally do speak up if they say something, if they see someone being abused, especially during Pride Month? I know you told me a story the other night of when you were last in Sydney during Mardi Gras.
Yeah, so I'll share that in a second. But to answer the question, I think if there is a real direct, loud, homophobic attack, generally people will maybe not speak up directly to the person that's doing it, but they may come and check in on you or make sure you're okay, which is all very kind. But what you don't see are the subtle attacks, the under the breath or the staring at you or whatnot. So people don't often talk up about that. And also when you think about our language and how we use our language, so particularly around, and I'm not in the trans community and I do not speak for them, but if you, we've got a staff member at work who's currently transitioning, which is incredible, and she's had a massive journey in the office, and there has been stuff around language and people saying, I just can't keep up. So whilst all that is for them to try and go, I've made a mistake, I feel bad, I need to justify why I made that mistake, so therefore I can't keep up. But what that says is that their life and what they're doing is not important when you word it like that. So those instances, people don't generally say anything. So when I posted that on social media, the reason why I did so is because I think it's really important for us to pull people up. And if you make a mistake and you say something, because, I mean, lots of us have this kind of intergenerational thought and stereotype of people within our community, right? So there will be times where that's going to slip out or that it may just happen. Address it, apologize, move on, right? So I think that's why I said it. I think it was really important. I do also think that people aren't always safe in speaking up, which is why I added that caveat. If you look at the marriage equality debate that we had, which was truly horrendous, so my husband and I had just we got engaged in April of 2017, well before the plebiscite was spoken of or anything like that. And so we were engaged and had locked in our wedding and all of our suppliers when that debate started happening. But you saw this use of language by the people that disagreed with our quote unquote lifestyle. That was not that long ago.
Yeah.
And it was rough. It was rough. It was same-sex parents is the equivalent to child abuse was one of the things. I'm a child of same-sex parents, and I can tell you right now, I was not abused for that. It's not what it was.
It's a terrible generalization.
Yeah, and look, and there was lots of stuff like that. So in that scenario, it wasn't always safe for people to speak up. Okay, yeah. So I understand that. But yeah, so I do think it's really important. So if you hear something, even if it's a very minor thing, so misgendering someone on a repeated basis, address it. Or making a snide comment. Oh, actually, prime example. And if anyone, if there's any males on here that identify as gay, I would say about every 2 or 3 weeks, I'll have someone make a joke about me going shopping with them. I hate shopping. I hate it. Like, I will go if I need something, but I'm in and out in like 3.5 minutes. Like, I can get in and out of Chadstone Shopping Centre in a heartbeat. So just be mindful of stuff like that. And if you hear someone doing that repeatedly, just maybe say, hey, maybe don't do that one. And explain to them why you feel like you can't do it. There's a way of addressing these situations where you impart knowledge as opposed to telling someone off. And it's really important that you go at it from an education focus as opposed to I'm better than you, you're doing the wrong thing, because no one will listen. But yes, so my husband, myself, and our good friend Daniel went up to Mardi Gras in 2016, I think it was, and had the best time at the parade, so much fun. Then we'd gone back to the hotel to get changed to go to the after party, and we got verbally attacked by a passing group of guys in a ute as we exited the hotel. And my gut instinct was to hide behind the electric box at the front of the hotel, was just to go, whoop, I don't want to get hit by anything. That was 7 years ago. So stuff still happens. I'm sure that things will happen, and it's really unfortunate. I don't wish it on anyone, but it'll happen during World Pride. It's really unfortunate, but we just need to make sure that we educate people, and the more people we can educate, the more these things won't happen, and people will think about their actions.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I can openly say that I have struggled with sometimes mucking up with people's pronouns. Mm-hmm. And I'm the first to say, I'm so sorry. Or what was it? During lockdown in the UK, we had a drag queen come on on my boss's show, and I didn't know how to refer to him, but in him, he's him in real life, but he's her as the character that he played. Yeah. It was hard, but I was like, I'm sorry, bear with me, and he and she were just very accepting. Oh, don't worry, just when I'm on screen, refer to me as her, and very understanding. But I mean, there's more and more people that are identifying as they. And I know that especially for the older generations, they just don't see it. They don't understand it. And they're like, that's ridiculous. There's no such thing as they. You're a man or you're a woman. We won't dig too deep on that because everyone has an opinion. But I think it's just being aware. If someone does feel that way, then just respect that that's how they feel. That's what the journey they're going through. They may not feel that way after a couple of months. They may say, no, actually, I don't identify that way. Allow them to have that journey.
Correct. And I also think we're very happy to refer to someone by the name that they choose. So my government name is Nicholas. I go by Nick. People are very happy to recognize that my name is Nick. And that's something that I've requested. I want to be known as Nick. There is no difference.
Yeah. I always say that about married names.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
From Miss Burningham to Mrs. Who shall I marry? Mrs. Idris Elba.
Yeah, good choice. But it's exactly that. And the other tip that I will say, if anybody's on this call and is worried about making those mistakes, a couple of things. First thing, I do it all the time. Not on purpose. It just accidentally slips out. Our staff member at work who's transitioning, not last week, the week before, I accidentally misgendered her, and I pulled myself up straight away and I said, I'm really sorry. I just fell out. Yeah. And she said, it's okay. It's all right. We're all okay. Yeah. Also, if you are struggling, and if you are struggling with that, the thing that works really well for me is don't refer to their gender in conversation. You can refer to everyone by just replacing it with their name. So you could say, instead of saying he's going on a Zoom, Nick's going on the Zoom.
Yeah.
So remove the gender from the conversation. I do it with a lot of people, unless I don't want to use their name in a context like this. But I will generally use people's names because, you don't always know what pronouns people are comfortable with, and a lot of the times people aren't comfortable telling you what they want their pronouns to be.
Yeah.
And so just use people's names. It's really a really easy trick.
So I'm just going to go on to an episode that I listened to on your podcast, Open Drive, for those who haven't listened to it yet. It's called the Pride episode, where you talk about all things LGBTQIA+, including your coming out story, your family tree, your parents' struggles with their sexuality, and what we can do in the workplace to help members of the community. Obviously, we have a limited time here, so we won't jump into the whole, everyone can go and listen to the podcast themselves. But would you mind talking us through some of the topics that you touched on? Like, let's start with the myth about being raised by same-sex parents. I know you touched on it, but you were raised by lesbians. Did that impact your childhood?
No, absolutely not. Not in the way that I think people assume that it did. A lot of people assume that because I didn't have a male influence in my life that they're aware of, that there was a whole set of things that I was missing out on. And it's just not true. So I had a very small family, but I still had an uncle that I looked up to. There were male influences throughout my entire life. You think about, if you're a parent and you're on this call, is yourself and your partner, be it whatever gender, the only representation of that gender that that child sees? Of course not. The things that made it difficult for me was other people's thoughts around parents. So I was born in 1986 and I went to primary school during the early 90s, and it was not the done thing. So my mum, my birth mum, I referred to her as mum, and I referred to my other mum as Louise. And throughout primary school, Louise was mum's friend. And then I realized what was going on. So that even kind of kept it from me. I knew that they were both my parents, but I didn't understand the full concept of it all. And then once I did, I was a bit more okay with explaining it to people, but it's really other people's thoughts that impacted that aspect of my childhood. Yeah. But interestingly enough, so I touched on at the beginning in terms of coming out, and that this assumption that if you have same-sex parents or you're from a very accepting family, which mine was, that it is much easier to come out. And yes, my coming out story is easier than others. It was also harder than others. And the other thing I'll say, please don't ever compare people's coming out stories, because everyone's is different. And what may seem from the outside as a good story from someone may not actually be a good story to them. So anyways, I was kind of forced out of the closet, even though I was dancing around my living room to Britney Spears. I'm not sure I was ever in, to be honest, but my mum actually found a letter that my pen pal and I had been writing back and forward from New Zealand, and it was a little raunchy. We were 17, and she called me downstairs and asked me what was going on, and I said to her, and there needs to be context to this, I did not believe what I'm about to say. It was a defense mechanism, but I said, no, I'm bi. And then she said, no, you're not. And I said, no, you're right, I'm gay. And it's really important to note that bisexual people are not a stepping stone away from being gay. It is not a transition. It is a sexuality all on its own. So please don't ever assume that just because particularly a male is bi, that he will end up being with a guy and being gay, because that's not the case. But yes, so I came out to her and then she burst into tears. She was gutted. She was so sad, because she was born in 1945. She grew up in Sydney in the Cross, in a time where it was extremely dangerous. She was particularly, so there was a cabaret club of trans women and drag queens called Lay Girls, and it was incredible. But she was in that group, so she was a part of that kind of scene, and she had so many of her male friends commit suicide. She had so many of them get bashed. So to her, me coming out was incredibly difficult because she was so worried I was going to have a really hard life. And she worried about that until I met my husband, Richard. So, which was 12 years ago now. And she worried the whole way through until I met him, and she realized that was me done. Tick. So that was really difficult for her. Louise was very different. She couldn't have cared less. She loved it. She thought it was great. She was the parent when I was a kid that used to buy me Barbie dolls and all of that stuff. But yeah, Mum asked me repeatedly from when I was about 13 if I was gay.
Yep.
Almost every year. And every year she asked me, it pushed me further into the closet. And I remember having these internal kind of conversations with myself saying, okay, well, I'm 14 now. I'll come out next year when I'm 15. I'll tell her next year when I'm 15. And then 15 would roll around and go, no, I'll tell her when I'm 16. And then when 17 rolled around, I said, no, I'll tell her when I'm 18. And then I was forced out of the closet by that letter. I'm still traumatized by her reading that letter, by the way. But I was mortified. So yeah, this assumption that if you're in this accepting, loving family, because my broader family is incredibly accepting. We have a really large number of people within the community. So my grandparents gave birth to 3 women, or 3 girls who grew into women, and 2 out of the 3 are lesbians. And then the 2 lesbians, so my mum and my auntie, both had gay children. And my auntie, who married a man, had 4 kids. She had 2 boys, 2 girls. One of her grandkids is gay. So there is a large volume of us in that. So even though everyone is so accepting in the family, it was still very hard to come to terms with. It was a hard, not to bring the mood down, but it was quite a hard journey.
Do you think, I know you're not a doctor and whatnot, but from your family experience, do you think that possibly being gay is genetic and has been passed down through your family?
Potentially, yeah. I think, I've always said that my family just kind of shows that it probably is. However, that's not proven, and obviously there's lots of studies that are happening around that, and so I can't kind of comment too much on that. But yeah, I would say based on my own scenario that the assumption would be yes. And also because if you look at like a nature versus nurture type thing, so that biology versus how you're raised, all 3 sisters raise their kids differently, right? In different environments. And up until my younger cousin, who's now gay, I was the only gay male in the family.
Right.
And so if anything, I was meant to grow up a straight man. I mean, I was surrounded by women who loved women.
Yeah.
Like I saw more women than I can count, right? I should have been that way. But yeah, I do think it's probably more genetic and something in the DNA.
You have talked through about that you tried so hard not to be gay and that you tried to suppress it. Can you talk through how you were able to navigate this at such a young age?
Yeah.
By the way, I've asked if Nick would be an open book. I've checked that I'm not stepping on toes here, everybody.
and likewise, if anyone has any questions that they think are too personal, I'm an open book, so please ask away. So I have to be honest, and there are other people who are incredible activists from our community who talk about this much more eloquently than I can. But essentially, you do the best you can, right? So as a kid, you're trying to figure yourself out. And you think about it, think about when you're growing up. So if you're a straight person on the phone call, you're growing up, the community around you is sending you signs that agree with the feelings that you're starting to have internally, right? So as you hit puberty, say, for example, if you, Candice, you go, oh, that guy's really hot, right? Those hormones kick in. Society around you is saying, well, of course she's going to say that because that is exactly what should be happening. Whereas for those that don't fit that mold, you go, this is wrong. I shouldn't be doing this. Why am I thinking like this? Am I not normal? There's a series of things that a lot of people think about. And really, some people deal with it better than others. I think I dealt with it okay. I have a very good psychologist who I go to, who has helped me navigate a lot of things. But really, the desire to be myself over sort of compensated that fear of coming to terms with me being gay. So I came to terms with myself being gay much earlier than I did for me telling my mum, for example.
Oops, sorry, I've just tried to open up. I lost the chat in case anyone is trying to put anything in there. So I've just opened it up here. Sorry if there was an echo. You were forced out of the closet. It's a horrible situation to be in. And, you know, we've seen recent examples of that where it's like someone like Rebel Wilson that was, you know, a reporter was going to break her news and so she did it herself and it's, you know, awful. But can you talk about how that affected your journey and like of self-acceptance, being confronted like this?
Yeah, I think it forced me to really come to terms with it as a more sort of public, sort of holistic thought. Right. I was okay after that. I didn't feel traumatized by the event. I didn't anything like that. I mean, it wasn't ideal and it happened, and I'm sure if mum had her time over, she wouldn't have done that. Yeah. I think her fear for me overran her kind of common sense in that space. But I think having that experience really enabled me to go, well, I've done that. I can maybe just push through other things that I feel really uncomfortable in. Because that was a very uncomfortable conversation. I've given you, obviously, the very abridged version of what Mum and I actually said.
Of course. But
you go, oh, okay, well, if I feel really uncomfortable, I know it's going to pass eventually. Now, I will say there can be someone that could have had the same experience as me and would have had a much different reaction. I also had, which is what I talk about in the podcast, my childhood was filled with a bunch of trauma around my parents' addiction and their own mental health issues. And by the time I'd come out, I'd already called 000 on my parents for mental health checks and all of that many times. So that situation, as horrible as this is about to sound, was quite minor in comparison to what I'd already dealt with as a child. And so I was like, okay, kind of kept moving, right? But others would not have been able, others would have struggled slightly more if they hadn't had, I guess, that pre-existing level of trauma that had carried on throughout their childhood. So I did not win in that scenario. No one wins, but it just made it a little bit easier because I had that pre-existing.
What's your advice to people who are struggling to come out?
Yeah. Great question. So take your time. It doesn't matter what age you come out. You could come out at 12 or you could come out at 45. Doesn't matter. It is up to you when you come out, no one else. And that's really important. So if you're a parent and you're raising your kids, and parents almost always know when their kid is probably going to come out. They know that the kid's likely part of the community, and the instinct is to try and coax them out. You've just got to let them be. Know that they share with them that they have a safe space and that they're free to come and talk to you, and allow them to navigate that. But as the kid, take your time, be safe. Don't push off everything into the darkness, both mentally and physically. Don't be sneaking around. Don't beat yourself up. There are lots of visual representations now of people within our community that show really healthy experiences. That actually the new, there's been a couple of really prominent, and I can only talk from my own experience as a gay man, but prominent TV shows over the years, right, that have depicted gay men very stereotypically.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best TV shows that came out that wasn't as stereotypical, there was still stereotypes within it, was a TV show called Looking. And it's incredible. I think it only had 2 seasons, phenomenal TV show. But that had a really great representation of gay relationships, gay friendships. So there are now lots of different media and lots of different people and personalities that you can see yourself in. So for me, I don't drink. I don't party. I've never done drugs. I've never smoked. I've had like 2 sips of alcohol, right? That is so rare, right? So I never thought that I would find someone like me or see myself in others. And there are others. So you see on social media. So if you're struggling to come out, and there's young people struggling to come out, look for your community. It's there. You just have to look for it and give yourself plenty of time. Plenty of time. Don't rush yourself.
That's great advice.
That was long-winded, but it was. I wanted to get it all out.
No, it's important to get it all out. I mean, everyone's got their own different journey with this. So as you say, find your tribe, find the people that work for you. There's so many amazing communities, and it's a much better place. It's still not great, but it's a much better place to be able to come out nowadays than it was. You're able to have your curiosity with things and not be ashamed to go into the news agency and try and buy a dirty magazine or whatever. Like it's talked about. It's like, look at the show Euphoria. Like there's all sorts of normalization of coming out as well. So that it's not such a taboo thing to do. It's a shame that we have to keep saying coming out. Not just being me.
It's just who you are. Yeah.
But let's switch it up, and let's talk about Richard, your husband, and Max, who is your dog, who features on our website now as well, on our social. So tell us about your story with Richard and how you guys came together and how you even thought about getting married before it was legal.
Okay, sure. I'll give you the abridged version. But so we met 12 years ago. In July this year, it's 12 years. I was working at Bankwest at Chadstone, and he was living with his parents in Murrumbina. And I was showing, this is a very funny story, which is why I'm happy to share it. I was showing the lady I worked with, who happened to be a lesbian, how Grindr worked. And for those of you that don't know what Grindr is, don't Google. So it's just Tinder. But worse. And so I was on there and I was like, see, there's like these people around. It says how far away they are and and Richard messaged me at that time. And we chatted, and then we caught up, and then literally just happened so fast. So we saw each other about every second day after the first week, like just kind of constant. I knew pretty much straight away that maybe not that he was the one, but that I was like fully head over heels. I watched him try and park his car on our first date. And when he came to sort of my door, I opened the door and I went, oh my God, he's really cute. And instantly I went, well, if I think he's really cute, then he's not going to be interested in me. So let's just be friends. And so that's what I did. I pretended I was just going to make a new friend in Melbourne. I'd only lived in Melbourne for about 4 months. And then, yes, cut to 6 months later, we moved in with each other, and we moved at a lightning pace.
Wow.
And then just an incredible series of events that have led us to now this point. And we're just, he's that type of person where he enables me to do whatever I want. So if he thinks it's a good idea, which he mostly does, he will tell me if something's a bad idea, but he'll be the one that'll say, of course, go for it. Why not? Go for it. And which has been really incredible. But in terms of getting married, I was ready for him to propose like after maybe 18 months. And so I spent years singing Beyonce Single Ladies at him around the house, like constantly, and kept saying to him, you know that I would ask you right now, but you need to be ready, because he was finishing uni and he was starting to build up his business. And so I was like, I know you need to do it when you're ready, but I'm going to keep hounding you. And then we flew to Sydney for my best friend Jess's wedding, and we stayed at Pier 1.
Nice.
It was very nice. Yeah, as in the whole wedding party stayed there.
I love it.
Yeah. And we went through the whole wedding weekend, and then the day that we were checking out, he asked me in the room and caught me totally by surprise, and it's hard to catch me by surprise because I'm always very suspicious.
That's the EA in you.
Yeah, constantly looking. That's what I was doing. But so he asked, I was like, yeah, duh, of course. And then this is a tip. If you're not engaged yet, if you get engaged, by the way, marriage is not for everyone, and that does not deem that you're then happy and you have a fulfilled life. I just need to say that. But if you happen to get engaged, give yourself as much time between the engagement and telling family as you can. So Richard and I left at 2 hours, and it was bliss. It was really nice. And then we were smothered with love, which was lovely. But no, so we'd started planning, and I remember saying to Richard, stuff it. Why must we wait for the government to say, yes, we deem your marriage to be the same as this straight couple that's known each other for 3 months and happened to be pregnant? It's this.
Yep.
I wasn't going to wait for that. It didn't matter to me. I knew eventually marriage equality would come in, and when that happened, we just converted ourselves in the courthouse. I wasn't fazed. And so, yeah, we'd locked in all of our suppliers, and then the plebiscite happened, which was, like I said at the beginning, it was very rough. I didn't enjoy that process at all. And then it passed, and then we got married on the 4th of March. So we've been 5 years married in a week and a bit, which is really exciting. Which is why I'm not at World Pride, because it's our 5th year marriage anniversary, which I think is gay enough, to be honest. So I'm not sure I need to come up. But so when we got married, in Stones of the Yarra Valley here in Melbourne, and it was the first legal same-sex wedding for each of our suppliers. So the venue, the celebrant, the musician, all of that. And our celibate, bless her, she was like 7 months pregnant, and she sobbed the whole time we were walking down the aisle. I properly sobbed, like she needed a few minutes when we got up there. It was very cute. But yes, so, and then we got Max like a year and a bit before we got married, and he's a miniature dachshund. He is full of attitude. I worked from home today, And anytime a bird would even fly remotely close to our house, he would go out to tell it off. So I was going to say I'm surprised you can't hear him now, but that's because Richard's taking him for a walk the house, so you don't have to listen to him barking.
Well, that's your fur baby, but you said that you and Richard were always had a plan to have children.
Yeah.
Can I say the next bit?
Yeah, you can.
You're on your journey?
Yeah, we're starting the journey, yeah. So getting there, looking at surrogacy, particularly in Canada, very early stages. It's a really long road, but we are very much ready. But interestingly, one thing to note is surrogacy in Australia for both, actually for anyone that needs to do it, which there is actually a very large portion of in terms of people that use surrogacy, straight couples who are unable to conceive naturally themselves. I don't like that word, by the way, naturally. But anyway, so the government just makes it really horrendous. It is a horrible process. Here in Australia, you can't advertise to be a surrogate. You also can't advertise to find a surrogate. So really, it's just the equivalent to throwing a blindfold on and walking through a dark room, hoping that you grab onto someone. It is incredibly difficult if you don't have someone that you already know that is willing to be your surrogate. And so we looked at a bunch of options overseas, and we've got family members in Canada. So I think I think that's where we're going to land. And so hopefully end of next year-ish, I should be on parental leave. So fingers crossed. We will see. There's lots of things that nature can do between now and then. So
yeah,
anything could happen.
I didn't know that the journey was such a horrid process. That's, something that Australia needs to look at, because if, you have to go overseas to create a family, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's not ideal. It's not.
No. So you work at Monash University, which is the largest university in Australia. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
How are they, as an employer, supporting the LGBTQIA+ community, and how has your kind of experience with that been?
Incredible. I will say this as kind of a caveat: most universities around the world are really good at it. Obviously, depending on whether they're public or private or religious or not, depends on how good they are, but mostly they're really good. Monash is incredible. There's a lot of visibility and incredible sense of community that we have. So we have an ally network. So we encourage people to come for, I think it's a half-day training session on how you can be an ally to staff and students. And then it's at the bottom of your email signature. You're on a website, also the Monash public website, saying that you're an ally. And if there is a student or a staff member that needs to talk to you about something in regards to that, they feel safe to come to you for that, which is incredible. It's an incredible program. We're having a Pride March tomorrow to celebrate World Pride at our orientation week. So I'll be doing that at 3:30 tomorrow. Watch out for my Instagram. I'll probably be live.
We're doing the Pride March here.
Yeah, well, yours is slightly bigger.
I'm gonna I'm gonna do my first Instagram live.
Yeah, so they're really great employer, and also they're really as quick as you can be in quite a red tape filled institution. That's incredible, Catherine. Catherine's just said it's their department's first time having a float this year. Oh, that's so awesome. See, that's the kind of stuff I really love. Like, that makes me, because so Catherine works for the government, so the government department. That's incredible. I'm really stoked. But yeah, so there's lots of things in policy that Monash also does that really important. So we now have leave that falls out of your sick and annual leave for people wanting to transition.
Oh, wow.
So you get leave to be able to transition and take some time off. It's not a huge amount. We can definitely be doing better.
Yeah, we've got to start somewhere.
Correct. For example, when I have a baby, or when Richard and I have a baby, I will get 12 months off work paid.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I get the equivalent rights to what a birth mother would at Monash. So maternity leave at Monash, and at most universities you get 12 months paid, depending on how long you've been at the university. So because I've been there for, I don't know, 600 years, I have all the rights. So I get 12 months off. But I get that as equivalent. There's nothing else I need to do additional. I literally fill out the form, sign it, submit it. I'll see you in 12 months.
That's amazing.
So there's all little, and that's just sort of the start of it, but there's so much that Monash has put into policy to help protect members of our community and make our staff and students feel really safe.
Awesome.
So it's good. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're up against the clock because these things always do this, where you're trying to enjoy having a session and then time runs out. But I just want to get first the two questions that were already sent in. So Brianna said, as office and event professionals, what do we need to be mindful of when organising and communicating LGBTQIA plus celebratory events?
So I think a lot of what we've already talked about kind of would lead into some common sense around that. I think it's really important to remember the history. So yes, I mean, my background and my little border thing about how exciting it is to have pride and the colour and fun and all that is great. But just remember it started from a protest and people lost their lives, and it's if you are someone that's going to take on that ownership, it would be really worthwhile to do some research around the history and why these types of events are significant. So that's number one. Also, if you're having speakers come in or anything like that, really think about how would they like to feel, and how can you make them feel as included as you possibly can. Ask speakers their pronouns. You heard at the beginning of the call, Candice shared what my pronouns are. I also have them on my Zoom name. That is also at work. Zoom enabled that. It's a really great feature. So push your staff to also do that if they're comfortable. Some people aren't comfortable, and that's okay. But really try and put yourself in the shoes of a member of the community. And not to say that you need to think about 18,000 different perspectives, because I understand that that's really overwhelming and you're not equipped because it's not the same life that you're leading. But always come at it from a really good intention. That would be the thing. So try and put yourself in someone's shoes and come at that with good intentions, and it'll be fine.
Great advice. Trisha has said, do you feel that there is still a glass ceiling for the LGBTQIA plus community? Is there more work to do?
Huge, heaps more work. Yeah. Heaps more work. So I think people thought that when marriage equality passed, that was it, that we'd ticked off our equality list and off we went. No, that really only affected those that wanted to marry the same gender as them. There is a whole set of discriminations around the trans community. I mean, Australia isn't great, but there are countries that are far, far, far worse. I mean, the rate at which trans women in particular are murdered is alarming. And it happens here as well. I think a lot of focus is put on the US system, but Australia is also not amazing in that front. But there is still a lot around that. A lot of discrimination around changing a name and changing your gender on government documents is also not an easy process, and a process that we can probably make worlds easier. There is still a lot of work to be done. And even if it's not political change, so rooted in policies and law, there is changes that still need to be made in terms of education within the community. So just because marriage equality passed, remember the percentage that it passed at. There was still, it wasn't the majority, but still a decent amount of the percentage that didn't agree with it. Now, my marriage has nothing to do with anyone else. I hope, unless you're secretly in my bedroom, which I'd rather you not be.
Bring snacks.
Yeah. If you're going to come in, I want snacks, probably chocolate. But do you know what I mean? It's not like anyone who's married on this call. I'm happy for you that you're married. I don't care also equally. Like, it doesn't impact my life. Just like I'm sure you're happy that I'm married. Doesn't impact your life. That's how it should be, right?
Yes.
So
everybody deserves to be miserable.
Correct. But no. Those people that voted no, and there's a range of reasons, right? There's a range of reasons why people voted no, but mixed in with that is some really deep-seated hatred. Yeah. And if we can keep educating the community over and over and over again, and it shouldn't, and I will say this to anyone that's part of the community on the phone call, it is not our job to educate members outside of the community. It is not a burden that you have to take on, which sounds odd, because then who educates? There are people that are comfortable educating. So I'm very happy to jump on a forum like this and put myself out there. But there are others that aren't. It is not their job to educate you. So if you've got a friend who's more quiet and reserved, who's part of the community, it's not their job to educate you on what they've gone through. Okay? So I will say that. Now, I've actually just seen a question. I know we're conscious of times. Yeah. Conscious of time. So Ali said, do you think the next generation will have more support from family and society as a whole and find it easier to be their true selves? Yes. Yes, I do, Ali. I think there are, as the years go on, you see it, because our generation, like, I couldn't care if my child came out purple. Like, I could not care less. As long as they are happy and that society is mostly going to treat them well, yep, I'm good.
Yep.
I'm so good, right? And I think as generations move up, yes, we will see significant change in that. Also, if you think about our political landscape in Australia, a lot of our politicians are on the older side. So they have views that are tied with that, which is why we have the conversations that end up happening publicly. As our generation starts, or younger generations, I love that I just called myself young. I hit an oil patch at 30 and I seem to be hurtling towards the end of life. But as those younger generations come in, so if you look at some of the really incredible, powerful, popular younger politicians, even like Jacinda Ardern, super progressive in her thinking, right? So that'll just naturally happen, and that cascades throughout society.
Yeah. I mean, we've discussed it in our family where my nieces and nephews have gone to kindy where there is, you know, their little friends have two mums or two dads, or you know, they celebrate pride. They don't hide it. They, you know, talk about rainbows and what rainbow families are, and in both contexts, as in different countries and also in the LGBTQ community. But I think, yeah, definitely in my family, being gay is all they have ever known. They've known that there's people in their life that are gay and they've loved them, and that's just what it is. It's their norm, I guess. Yeah. So they don't know any better. They're like, yeah, that's what it is. And I think that, as you say, as these kind of older thought leaders and whatnot, old white men start fading out, it will I think it will be a much better place for the next generation to come in and be who they want to be.
I think so. And one thing I just wanted to make a mention of, I understand the time, but there is a lot of conversation at the minute, particularly in the US, but it has come through here as well, around education of children about the LGBTQIA plus community. That isn't, and I think we need to be really clear, there isn't a level of indoctrination. If we could recruit people to be gay, mate, there are a list of people I'd love to recruit, right? But you just can't. It's just not what's going to happen, right? And I think back to my childhood, so primary school in the early 90s, I got sex education that didn't apply to me. Yeah. I had no idea what my experience would ever be like. There was no representation of it. There was no representation of what female to female sex is. And I understand that can be hard for children to understand, but also just remember, we're already showing them the straight version.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So think about, okay, if it's your child, wouldn't you want them fully equipped with the information to be able to make safe and responsible choices when it does come time for them to sleep with someone for the first time, to make sure that they're okay? So I just thought that was really important. And if you're having these conversations in your family, I think it's important that people talk about that a lot of the people in the community who are my age and older had no education around what sex for them would look like at all. So that's just one aspect of it.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important.
I think that's all the questions that I think all the time we're going to have anyway. So I just want to thank you again, Nick, one, for giving us your time to discuss this. This is obviously a topic that's so close to my heart, and I'm so glad that you were able to be with the community tonight to show your vulnerability with this. And also, if just one person can listen to this story and feel better and take something out of it, and we've recorded this so that other people can watch it that weren't able to attend tonight. It's just keeping the conversation open. It's about letting people know that it's okay to be who you are, authentically you. And it takes people like you having the guts to be able to tell your real story and experiences. So thank you. Thank you very much. And happy World Pride.
Yes, happy World Pride. And thank you so much for having me and for everyone joining. Thank you for the questions. I will say, if anybody's watching this and they want to ask me some questions privately, or they want to talk to me privately about anything, please make sure you reach out. I'm very happy to continue this conversation offline. And that's to anyone watching the replay as well. I'm very happy to jump on a Zoom and have an open chat.
Amazing. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I know it's probably your dinner time and whatnot, so thank you for tuning in. And for anyone that's in Sydney, let's celebrate. Let's go out and party. Let's enjoy World Pride while we got it. There's so many things on. Go online, see what you can attend. There's so many free stuff. Go out there and celebrate with the community, because that's what it's about. So thank you again for tuning in to our first, what do you call this? Chat? Yeah, let's call it that. So thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Bye. Equality, inclusion, equity, and diversity are at the core of who we are. We're committed to celebrating inclusion across race, ethnicity, gender, age, identity, ability, and experience. We're passionate supporters of the LGBTQIA+ community and are forever focused on empowering marginalised communities. We welcome you to Admin Avenues.